On a cold, windy morning, a homeless woman named Emma wandered through the busy streets, clutching a worn-out folder containing her few belongings, a resume, some old recommendation letters, and a fading photograph of her family. Despite her rough appearance, her spirit remained unbroken. She had been tirelessly searching for work, stopping at every shop and cafe to ask if they were hiring, only to be turned away again and again. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, and exhaustion shadowed her face, but she refused to give up. As she sat down on a park bench to rest, her eyes caught something unusual on the ground near a trash bin, a sleek black leather wallet. For a moment, she hesitated, unsure whether to pick it up. Curiosity and caution battled within her. She had seen many things lost on the streets, but rarely something that looked this valuable. Finally, she reached out and opened it gently. Inside were several crisp $100 bills, shiny credit cards, and a driver's license belonging to a man named Alexander Reed. Her heart skipped a beat. The money inside could easily buy her food for weeks, maybe even rent a small room. For someone who had been sleeping in shelters and surviving on handouts, it was a temptation beyond measure. But as Emma stared at the name and photo on the ID, she couldn't bring herself to take a single dollar. She whispered softly, "This isn't mine." Her conscience, shaped by the values her parents once taught her, guided her next move. Instead of pocketing the cash, Emma decided to find a way to return the wallet to its rightful owner. She walked into a nearby cafe and politely asked to use the phone, explaining that she had found someone's lost wallet. The barista, surprised by her honesty, allowed her to make the call. Emma searched for Alexander's contact details through his business card tucked in the wallet. He was a well-known entrepreneur and philanthropist in the city. That moment marked the beginning of a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. Emma didn't know that her simple act of honesty would not only restore a man's faith in humanity but also open the door to an extraordinary connection, one built on compassion, respect, and destiny. Her unexpected discovery, born from desperation, turned into the turning point of her entire life. With the lost wallet safely in her hands, Emma stood in the corner of the small cafe, her heart pounding as she dialed the number written on the business card she had found inside. The phone rang several times before a deep, composed voice answered, "Alexander Reed speaking." She hesitated for a moment. How would a homeless woman explain that she had found a millionaire's wallet? Taking a deep breath, she softly said, "Mr. Reed, I think I found something that belongs to you." Alexander was taken aback. His wallet had gone missing earlier that morning when he had stepped out of his car to help someone with directions. He had assumed it was lost forever or perhaps stolen. He listened carefully as Emma explained where she had found it and assured her that everything was untouched. There was no hint of greed or expectation in her tone, just quiet honesty. Moved by her sincerity, he asked where they could meet so he could retrieve it personally. When Alexander arrived, dressed in an elegant suit, he was surprised to see the woman who had called him. Her clothes were old, her shoes worn out, and yet her eyes shone with warmth and dignity. Without hesitation, she handed him the wallet, saying, "I knew it must have been important to you." He opened it and found every dollar, every card, every document exactly as he had left them. Overwhelmed, he offered her a generous reward, but Emma politely declined. "Please, sir, I didn't do it for money," she said with a faint smile. "I just know what it feels like to lose something precious." Those words struck a chord in Alexander's heart. For a moment, he was speechless. Here was a woman who had nothing, no home, no job, barely enough to eat, and yet she refused to take advantage of a situation that could have easily changed her circumstances, at least temporarily. Her act of honesty stood out in a world where integrity often fades in the face of desperation. Emma's kindness wasn't born from wealth or comfort, but from a pure heart and an unshaken sense of right and wrong. As Alexander thanked her and watched her walk away, something inside him shifted. He couldn't stop thinking about her, not because she had returned his wallet, but because she had given him something far more valuable, hope in humanity. After that brief yet unforgettable meeting, Alexander Reed couldn't shake the image of the woman who had returned his wallet without taking a single cent. Her words, her humility, and her quiet strength echoed in his mind. That evening, as he sat in his luxurious apartment overlooking the city skyline, he found himself wondering how someone with so little could carry such dignity and kindness. While most people in his world were driven by profit, Emma had shown him something priceless, integrity born from struggle. The next day, Alexander decided he had to see her again. He retraced the steps to the cafe where they had met, asking the barista if he knew where she might be found. "She sometimes comes by to look for work or get a cup of water," the barista replied sympathetically. That answer stayed with him. Determined, Alexander asked his driver to accompany him through nearby shelters and community centers until, by late afternoon, he found her sitting quietly by a street corner, clutching her worn folder of job applications. When Emma saw him, she stood up, startled and unsure. Alexander approached her with a warm smile. "You didn't let me thank you properly yesterday," he said. "Please, have lunch with me." At first, she refused, embarrassed by her appearance and hesitant to accept anything that might feel like charity. But his sincerity convinced her. Over a modest meal at a small restaurant, they talked for hours. Emma spoke honestly about her struggles, how she had lost her job after her mother's illness, how one hardship had led to another until she found herself homeless. Yet even as she spoke of pain, her voice carried no bitterness. Alexander, a man who had everything money could buy, listened intently, realizing that her resilience was something he deeply admired. By the end of their conversation, he offered her a position at one of his companies, not as an act of pity, but because he recognized her determination and integrity as rare qualities. Emma was stunned. Tears welled in her eyes, not out of sadness, but out of gratitude. That day marked the beginning of a beautiful chapter neither of them had expected. What started as a lost wallet became a meeting of two worlds, one broken by hardship, the other blinded by privilege, finding common ground in kindness. For both Emma and Alexander, this encounter was more than coincidence, it was destiny gently unfolding. What began as an unexpected meeting soon blossomed into something neither Emma nor Alexander could have ever imagined. Working in Alexander's company, Emma quickly proved herself to be hardworking, intelligent, and trustworthy. Though she started in a small administrative role, her dedication and creative ideas didn't go unnoticed. Alexander found himself drawn not only to her work ethic but also to the light she carried, a quiet strength that inspired everyone around her. Despite coming from completely different worlds, their connection grew naturally. Emma never treated Alexander like a millionaire, and he never treated her like a charity case. They spoke freely about life, dreams, and the pain of loneliness that money or status could never erase. In Emma's presence, Alexander rediscovered the simple joys he had long forgotten, laughter over coffee, long walks in the park, and the warmth of genuine human connection. Emma, too, began to see Alexander not as the man whose wallet she returned, but as someone deeply kind, humble, and surprisingly vulnerable. She learned that behind his success was a man who had lost trust in people, until she came along. Her honesty had reminded him that goodness still existed in the world. Slowly, admiration turned into affection, and affection into love. Alexander often found excuses to visit her department, pretending to discuss work matters, but his eyes always gave away something deeper. Emma noticed, but she was cautious. She feared gossip, judgment, and the fragile line between gratitude and romance. Yet no matter how hard she tried to ignore it, her heart would flutter every time he smiled at her. Their bond deepened after Alexander invited her to a charity event his company was sponsoring. Dressed in a simple gown provided by a kind colleague, Emma looked radiant. When she walked into the room, conversations stopped, and eyes turned, not because of her dress, but because of her grace. Alexander couldn't take his eyes off her. Later that night, under a canopy of city lights, he confessed his feelings. "Emma," he said softly, "you've changed how I see the world, and myself. I don't want to imagine my life without you." Tears welled in her eyes as she realized that love had found her when she least expected it. From strangers connected by fate to two hearts bound by trust and compassion, Emma and Alexander's love story became a living proof that sometimes, the greatest treasures are found not in wealth, but in the purity of a kind heart. Emma's life had been a constant struggle, filled with uncertainty, hunger, and endless nights of worry about the future. But after returning Alexander's wallet and forming a connection with him, everything began to change in ways she had never imagined. Her days of searching the streets for work were over. She now had a stable job at Alexander's company, giving her both financial independence and a renewed sense of self-worth. Yet, the transformation was far deeper than material security. Emma's confidence grew as she realized that her past struggles had not defined her, her choices had. The decision to act with honesty and integrity, even in desperate circumstances, had not only earned her respect but had also opened doors she never thought possible. Every morning, as she walked into her new workplace, she felt a sense of pride and purpose that had been missing for so long. Alexander, too, was changed. In meeting Emma, he had found more than a trustworthy employee, he had found a partner who challenged him to see life through a lens of empathy and humility. Her perspective on life, shaped by resilience and compassion, reminded him of what truly mattered beyond wealth and status. Their bond strengthened daily, as they shared not just work and social events but quiet moments of laughter, honest conversation, and dreams for the future. Their love story became a symbol of hope, showing that acts of kindness and integrity can create ripples that transform lives. Alexander encouraged Emma to pursue further education, supported her ambitions, and celebrated every achievement as if it were his own. In turn, Emma brought warmth and authenticity into his world, softening the edges that years of business and ambition had built around his heart. Eventually, their relationship became public, and people were inspired by the extraordinary journey of a homeless woman and a millionaire who found each other against all odds. Emma's story reminded everyone that no matter how dire circumstances may seem, one act of honesty, courage, and compassion can change the course of life forever. For Emma, the new beginning wasn't just about wealth or comfort, it was about love, security, and the chance to live a life filled with purpose and joy. The streets she once roamed in despair were now a distant memory, replaced by a home filled with laughter, hope, and the unwavering knowledge that integrity and kindness can truly lead to miraculous outcomes. In finding Alexander's wallet, she had not only returned what was lost, she had discovered a future she could never have dreamed possible, a life where love and destiny intertwine to create a beautiful, enduring story.